goals iteratively. So that it doesn't make any sense at all. So this is an example of a template of a personal development plan. This is not captured anywhere. It's just information that is used by the person. And we have the figure of what we call the development coach. Sometimes we also call it development manager. It depends on where you are in the organization. So this person is actually is a developer that's working in a different team and takes 20% of his time to help other developers to be better at what they do. And so this every 3 months, more or less, the dev coach will help you do a small retrospective of how you've been doing with your personal ambitions. And again, so this is focused on personal goals rather than delivery goals. Obviously, this might be affected by those, but not directly. And so there will be like a small retrospective so you can catch up. And also the dev coach will help, will meet and do frequent catch-ups to see how he can support that person and how the person is actually doing and whether some training needs are required and so forth. So like bi-weekly more or less is what they are doing right now to support in anything that is really necessary. So to put a bit of context on what a dev manager, dev coach is, so in the past, so we have established this matrix organization where it applies in certain different ways in different parts of the organization, but more or less it can be summarized like this. So we have vertical teams, multifunctional teams with a product owner. In the past, the product owner was the one in the most of occasions doing the coaching of the employees, but it didn't really work very well because they are really focused on the product rather than the people. So it was difficult for them to find time to actually help each individual, and also they were biased a little bit by the fact that they were working day to day with them. While having someone that's out of that team and also has similar issues, and it's your peer, will help a lot for the people to actually open up and talk about their issues, be open about them, and to just work on the things that need to change. The last thing that is probably the most important one is at the end of the period in the past, we used to have this process where, as I explained, where there was some feedback from the manager and gathered, but this was every 6 months, right? So you might be getting something that happened 5 months ago. And obviously, okay, why didn't you tell me before that? It doesn't really make any sense. So that's why we actually have the bi-weekly catch-ups, but we also need everyone to be, so we want to really nurture the feedback culture and make sure that feedback is happening all the times, not just at every 6 months, all the times. And it's not just the manager with the employee, it's absolutely everyone in the company needs to talk to each other. So things that we've done to make that happen is everybody in that particular pilot that we're running right now went to feedback sessions, feedback training sessions to know how to provide meaningful feedback. The other thing is the dev managers, dev coaches, plus the scrum masters, plus the product owners, they all encourage everyone to actually talk to each other when there are issues and that there is immediate feedback. So that's very important. So when things go wrong, go and talk to that person and make sure that things are changed immediately and not talk to that person 3 months afterwards, which then it's going to be meaningless. And the last thing that we also did, well, we wanted to make sure that there was peer-to-peer feedback. So there was no longer second-hand feedback. It's first-hand feedback is the feedback that is really important and relevant because it can be backed up with facts and you can actually express your feelings about it. So what we did, this is really a challenge to make people to do that because it's always like it's out of the comfort zone of the majority of the people. So what we are now, after some iterations, what we found out is that it would be a lot better to actually put something in place to help. So we defined 5 different team peer-to-peer sessions. So each team could decide which one to use. And And with that one, which one to use? And then they would essentially have somewhere like public feedback sessions or private feedback. So there's one, for instance, speed feedback, where people pair up and they talk to each other and give feedback for 10 minutes, and then they pair up with somebody else for 2 hours at the end with the entire team. So I'm running out of time. Just the last thing. So we, of course, our trip is not finished. Things that are pending to do to make this pilot successful is how we, in an environment where we want to have merit, how do we tie this to compensation if there's no one that is actually looking at the feedback, and it's first-hand feedback from peers? How do you actually then tie up to a compensation model? The second one is how to manage promotions from a career progression standpoint, how to make that happen. So this is something we're working on. And finally, how to sell this to the rest of the organization so that it can be applied everywhere else. So if I can summarize what I would like you to take away, if you want to apply this in your own companies as well, is please decouple compensation from personal development. Think on and focus on forward-looking personal development rather than individual delivery goals. Do frequent catch-ups and feedback. Feedback is key. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, it was really great. I have a question. How, you mentioned that you're doing this as an A/B test. How will you measure the success of the pilot?
That's a very good point. So, as I said, we are running every 3 months a survey. And in that survey, we are sending the same questions to people that's out of the pilot. So with that, we are measuring the differences between people that is using the former traditional model and people that's using the new model. And then we can detect. The issue has been so far, I don't really have results, because so far there has been a lot of interferences from how we have run the surveys, so they were not really meaningful. But we are hoping that next runs, actually we're running one next week, will be a lot more successful.
So it's about employee satisfaction, the
Yes.
pilot. Checking if we improve the employee satisfaction. Okay.
Okay, this one, the last one over there.
Hi, no criticism or judgment, just a curiosity. Why are you here instead of someone from the HR department?
I work very closely with the HR department. So I'm the only manager in this organization. So it's a very thin line between HR and what I do. And I work really, really closely with them. So they are actually part of this, so they are defining this at the same time. And we're working with them to, obviously, if we want to roll it out to the entire company, we are including them.
Hello. We've tried decoupling personal development from the compensation, feedback sessions or whatever. But at the end, the truth is it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked because a lot of people believe that when you're trying to have sessions for personal improvement, you're somehow trying to hide excuses for a bad compensation session later on in the year. How have you tackled that?
So as I said, there's no formula and we're working on it. So in my opinion, and this is my opinion, the granularity that you use for personal development is very thin. So you're talking about things that are small things on your day-to-day and things, or maybe it's just one technology or stuff like this, stuff like that, which it's going to be very difficult to translate into money. So why make that relationship? I think it's pretty much useless. And if you want to make give some more money to people that is doing something great, it's fine, but it has to be very, very visual. Because at the end, you won't be able to measure whether somebody's doing 3.4 or 3.5 or 3.6 from those conversations anyway. It's going to be completely subjective. Where you apply subjectiveness, it doesn't really matter. It will always be subjective. And therefore, I don't think there's a formula. It's focus on the big things on the salary side, on the small things on your personal development. Thanks.